We are ready for a interesting presentation. One of the things that attracted me about this is using ColdFusion with artificial intelligence and machine language as we create a smarter contact center. And I guess it uses a Google DialogFlow CX engine, which is new to me. Maybe it's not new to some of the people in this meeting. Take it away, Nick.
Nick Kwiatkowski. I'm the manager of the Unified Communications team here at MSU. We're going to be talking about Google DialogFlow CX. And we're going to be integrating it with ColdFusion and all that type of stuff. So, there's my name. All right. Okay, so what is Google DialogFlow CX? So it is a cloud-based conversational machine language engine from Google that is designed around contact centers and agent interactions. What that pretty much means is it is a brand new way to build what they call IVRs, or essentially those auto attendants or whatever you want to say, and chatbot systems and all that type of stuff based on artificial intelligence. It's been out for about a year or so, and the features are continuously being added. So it is still a very new product. So Google has a version of this called DialogFlow ES, which is, I would say, extremely popular. It is meant for one-turn conversations. So essentially, you put together a set of what we're going to call intents, or essentially a bunch of directives, and then DialogFlow, you send it some speech, either over a phone or through a chat bot like a web page, SMS, or whatever, and then DialogFlow ES essentially says, okay, this is the one that best fits that, and then you can do something with it. What CX does, it's really about a full conversation. So it starts to remember the history of what you've said. It starts putting things together. It starts trying to act like a human and really try to figure out, like, what is the person really after? Start pulling out nouns and pronouns and all that type of stuff out of a conversation to start build a taxonomy about what does that person want. We can start making decisions on those things. So, yeah. So what makes it really worth looking into? So it's again a brand new product from Google designed around extending Google's conversational power into the contact center. So Google over the years has just learned a ton about conversational voice interactions through their Google Home products, Google Assistant on Android devices. The neat thing is the voice training has already been done. When you talk to, let's say you call, a bank or a credit card company or something like that, and it'll say, tell me what you want to do. Those are like the last generation of system. Essentially, they're looking for one word or two words, and then they make a decision based off of that. What DialogFlow is really about is having a complete conversation. So a good example of this would be, let's say you call into Comcast and it says, all right, tell me what you want. You say, I need to make an appointment. But if you say, I need to make an appointment for tomorrow, it doesn't understand the rest of that stuff. It just looks for the word appointment, and then it goes and routes you. And then it gets to the next step and says, okay, what's the next thing you want? It'll look for particular words, and then it's going to route based on that. And really, each interaction is only going to be looking for like one or two words. So it's not really smart. It's just you can use your voice.
It's somewhat smart, isn't it? Because if I say I want to talk to an agent and I just use the word agent, it will go through 15 minutes before it'll let me add an agent. It pretends it doesn't understand.
Well, that might be because there's no agents available, but yeah. But really, it's one of those things where like the legacy system, the old IVRs and all that type of stuff, they're just looking for words. And the problem is if the person doesn't say particular words that's been trained on, it won't know what to do. The neat thing about this next generation stuff is it knows the taxonomy of language, and it starts to build breadth on it. So the way we program it is we literally type in training sentences. So we say, these are the types of things I'm expecting. And then it starts putting those together and says, okay, I know these 10 things that you told me. I can now expect 1,000 things because they're going to be close to it. So you may not say the word appointment. You might say, I need to schedule something on my calendar. Google knows, hey, that association with calendar, with appointments is probably close enough, so we're going to send you that direction.
How does it do with English as a second language?
You can actually have it so just by clicking a few things, it starts doing automatic translations. So people can actually speak in their native tongue. You
cool.
can also, for our testing, it's been fairly good for even people with very heavy accents and all that type of stuff. So I do have to say, we have at MSU, we've actually launched this with our healthcare system. So if you call any of the MSU healthcare groups, we're actually using this on a day-to-day basis. In fact, in the last few months, we've had over 140,000 interactions with this system. With, I would say it's not been perfect, but it's been, for most users, they actually enjoy it quite a bit. So, but really how it's working in the background is using that voice training that's already in everybody's cell phones and the Google Home products and all that type of stuff, which has hundreds of thousands of, if not millions of devices already out there. They're doing all the training, so they're figuring out all these crazy accents and all that type of stuff and associating that with better words. What it's doing in the background is it's taking the phrases and sentences that you're saying, and then it breaks it down into phrases that we kind of trigger on, and then we go and do other interactions based on that. So it also, what's really neat about it is this is one of the first products that allows you to extract those nouns out of phrases and then be able to do decisions based on those nouns. So let's say I need to make an appointment for tomorrow. You can literally say, I need to make an appointment for tomorrow in the system. It remembers that you said tomorrow, and then later on, if it were to ask that again, it actually can skip that question. Or I need to make an appointment with sports medicine, for example. It says, well, the first question I would have asked would have been, what clinic are you talking about? But since you already said sports medicine, it can skip that question, go to the next one.
Powerful.
So let's show off our demo healthcare flow, or our agent is what they call it. So I'm going to go into the DialogFlow console here. And this is kind of what it looks like. It's, let's see here. Over here, you know, we're going to call into here, and there's certain things I've already programmed before. So things like, you know, what are your hours, make an appointment, pay a bill. I need to do a prescription refill. I need to schedule surgery. Need to talk with a nurse, doctor's office, you know, referrals, things like that. So I can start to build, like, these are things I've already put in here, and I've done some basic terms of information. But I've associated a phone number with this, so we can call in.
Thank you for calling the MSU Health Clinics. How can I help you today?
When are you open?
Which clinic do you need the hours for?
Sports medicine.
The Sports Medicine Clinic accepts patients from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, but is closed for university and federal holidays. What else can I help you with?
I need to pay my bill.
Just a moment while I connect you with our billing department.
So that's just an example of, you know, going in there and having a conversation. So I could tell it complete sentences. I could tell it just single words like hours or billing or something like that. But we can start to build some of these things. And, you know, this is a pretty complicated system. We just actually, for the hours thing, for example, we had two turns, what we call turns. So we had a question response type of setup twice. So it actually remembered the history of that, where to go, all that type of stuff. Based on these things here, I could have said also radiology. So if I call in again,
Thank you for calling the MSU Health Clinics. How can I help you today?
when is radiology open?
Our radiology department is open from 5 a.m. until 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday. What else can I help you with?
There you go. So I actually included that initial clinic name in there, and it already knew that, so it didn't have to ask that follow-up question.
How deep does it go? If I wanted to renew a prescription, do I just get handed off to a human and have to repeat everything, or will it just renew it?
So that is up to the person that programs it. This system here is fully capable of, doing all that and handing it off, or also doing it if you do. That's how we're going to do the ColdFusion side. We're going to talk about how we can do that so we can actually make it live.
Okay.
So,
hey Nick, I got a question for you.
Yep.
So obviously you already programmed sports medicine and radiology in there. What if, I don't know, pick some off the wall clinic that doesn't exist, Randy Clinic?
Mm-hmm.
It's still based upon whether that person programmed traps in there, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So an example here, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, for the clinics that I actually have in here. Let's see here, clinic names. The ones that I added in here already are these groups right here. What's neat is I can also put in synonyms. So for example, which one here is a good example? So the Breslin Cancer Center, in this case here, is also known as the oncology department, is also known as the cancer center. Or just saying the word cancer. It'll know to auto-correct those things essentially if it starts to pick up on those types of things. Now again, this is machine learning. So if a bunch of people start calling in and they call it the, I don't know what's a derogatory term for cancer, but sick man's clinic or something like that, it'll actually start adding that stuff to this list if it's making correct assumptions on these. That's that machine learning piece.
Does it log when it can't find what you're...
Yep, there's ways that you can bail out correctly. There's ways they can ask additional information to try to get the correct thing and all that, yes.
Okay.
So that's just the really basics. So let's talk about how this kind of all comes together. So under the hood, how it kind of comes together is you have Google DialogFlow CX, which is a web service, so it's a cloud service. The way that we connect to it could be one of two ways. One could be through a chat bot. This could be a bot system that you add on your website. You could also connect to it through an on-prem phone system or external prem as well. So you can assign 10-digit phone numbers to it. You can do pretty much any of this type of stuff. Right now, a vaya CPass is one of the ways you can interact with or integrate with this. You can go to just do a Google search for a vaya CPass, and you can sign up. And very similar to like Twilio or those types of cloud-based systems, you throw some money at it. They'll give you a phone number, so a local phone number, and then you say, I want to connect it up to DialogFlow, and away you go. So the other way that, and then we are going to be interacting with it with a ColdFusion server. In this case, it's going to be a Lucy server, but it can be really anything that talks ColdFusion. Now, the neat thing is it's completely just based off of REST. So if you'd rather write this in Python, if you'd rather write this in Node or really whatever you want, ASP.NET, anything that can speak REST and essentially take form posts for REST, and then you respond back with a JSON document, you can pretty much do. So there's really no limitations on this, and what and how you do your interactions is actually pretty easy. And again, that allows for that database interaction, allows you to do additional functions, allows you to actually change the verbiage that comes back, which is neat too. So I can say, for example, to make an appointment, I can have the DialogFlow system collect a bunch of information, figure out in a database when the next appointment time would be, and then the person can say, yeah, I want to make an appointment for next Tuesday. It can take a look at the appointment calendar, say, okay, Tuesday there's a half-hour slot. This person already is coming in for, let's say, a sprained ankle. They're going to half-hour slot should be fine. It can go book it and tell the person this is when your time is. Make sure that you send an email with your insurance card information, whatever it might be. So can really make these types of interactions really neat. Now, at our health clinics, we don't necessarily want to automate everything. So one of our goals with our health clinics is not necessarily allow users to self-service everything, because we still want to have some of that human interaction. However, there are certain functions that just take a long time. So for example, the appointment side, the amount of time that you would be on the phone trying to set an appointment, the going back and forth, looking at the calendar, are there times available on Tuesday? Yes, there's times available on Tuesday. Well, we have appointment slots at 1:30, 3:30, 5:30, all this type of stuff. And the person looks and says, yeah, 1:30 sounds good. Keep on going back and forth. This is chewing up an agent's time. So you have a live person who, let's say they're only on the phone for 5 or 6 minutes with this person, but that's still 5 or 6 minutes. Now, if we could reduce that to a minute, now we can squeeze four times the number of people through that queue. So what can we do to actually reduce that? Well, this interaction of, let's say, setting an appointment, we can have the DialogFlow system set up whenever that appointment is. You can go back and forth, talk to the chatbot, all that type of stuff. You don't need an expensive human to do that type of stuff. And then when everything is said and done and you've chosen your time, forward that to the agent so they can go and make sure everything is correct, that they look at the patient file, make sure everything is sane and all that type of stuff, and do that last part that a human is really good at. So that's some of the goals that we have with the health clinics, and you can extend that to be other things too. So you're making an appointment with Comcast, again, that back and forth of, when are you available? How long does it take? All this other type of stuff. A chatbot can take care of all that stuff. The very last piece of actually setting that appointment, communicating all that information to the agent so that all they have to say is, yep, this looks good, hit accept, and then send to the books. So that's how this is really trying to revolutionize this type of stuff. So Randy, for your group, for an outbound contact center, you can do this exact same type of setup. You can have it go call a person and say, hey, this is MSU. Do you want to talk to us about the Rick James scholarship, for example? I don't know. Or that type of stuff. And then, or we got this exciting stuff. And as soon as the person says yes, you go bail it to an agent. If they want to say, hey, give me more information, they can actually be talking to the chatbot or, all this other type of information before they actually connect to a live agent. So really saving that live agent's time. You still want to have some of that personal thing to get them on the hook and all that other type of stuff. But really it's about, the really rote and mundane stuff that you just keep on going over and over and over again that, you can just automate that stuff out. That's the stuff you should automate out.
I agree with you. First, Nick, I like your diagram. If you scroll back there, I like the color coding. I wish I would have did something like that with mine. So I'm going to take that. I'll copy that as a really good practice. So two things where it says a via Cloud CPass. Yep. I'm assuming you have one phone number. It goes out to everybody. And if everybody who's on this call right now called it, we all would get handled by the system. There would never be a busy signal, correct?
That is correct.
And then let me see the Google side. What was my question there? Oh, I'm sorry. On the Google DialogFlow CX, you're showing us this demo with the phone right now. I imagine it would behave the same way with text.
Yep.
Same interface, all that great stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
So let me show so this is an example here. It's the simulator, but it's pretty much the same thing as a chatbot. So I can say hi. It'll come back and it will say, thanks for calling the health clinics. Now I can customize that specifically for a text-based interaction. So instead of calling, you would say, thanks for connecting with or whatever. Let's see here. When is the internal medicine clinic open? Internal medicine clinic is, accepts patients from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So this is exactly what you'd see on a chatbot through a web page.
Perfect.
And what's really neat about this system is the fact that I can actually program the exact same flow, and I would be able to push that to both voice users and textual users. So I actually have an SMS number I can point to this as well, and you can do the exact same type of thing where somebody can text the same, when is internal medicine open, and then it can get that same response you've already programmed in the one. So, all right, so continuing on. So in kind of the plug for the Avaya Cloud CPass, formerly known as Zang.io, is one of the first CPass providers to have the native integration with DialogFlow CX. There are quite a few other cloud providers like Twilio and others that also integrate with the ES product. So that's that first generation where you have just a single turn. You can't do form fills and all that stuff. And we'll show where some of the stuff gets a little more ingrained in a bit here.
What do the initials CPass stand for?
It's call provider as a service, or calling system as a service. So think of it as PBX in the cloud, just like everything else went in the cloud.
Yep.
So the way you would do this, and I'm not going to show the Avaya cloud piece here, but essentially you can log into their portal, you buy a phone number, and then you say, you can associate it with an application, and that application can be a DialogFlow CX.
So you don't have to buy any hardware. This is just another subscription.
Just a subscription, yep. Very similar to like what you've done with Twilio. You buy a phone number, and then you literally point it somewhere. There's nothing on-prem that you have. It's $1 a month for the phone number, and then it's usage.
Is Twilio got a competing?
I imagine that they will. So Twilio has written their own version of this. I wouldn't say it's nearly as powerful, but pretty much all these providers have something kind of along this idea. But what I really like about Google's is they are able to leverage a lot of the machine learning and all that type of stuff they've already done with having a voice recognition system in everybody's pocket already.
Right.
So
somebody else might have to partner with, say, Amazon to get that.
Exactly. Yep. The voice recognition and all that type of stuff, and the voices and all that stuff are built in, and they already have access to all that. So
the way things are going.
Mm-hmm.
My TV's that way now.
So when you start programming a DialogFlow CX system, there's a couple of key concepts that you're going to have to know. So one of them is called an entity type. So think of that as the nouns that you're working with, that you're having that conversation with. So I'd like to order a new TV. That TV is an entity type. What time is Randy Brown available to fix my refrigerator? How much is that doggy in the window? I'd like to schedule an appointment for an installation of my cable service at noon tomorrow. So all those words that I highlighted are entities. So those are things that I can then capture, and then I can do decisions based off of. Those are also items that I can start to then maybe write to a database, or do what they would call webhooks, or essentially like connections to my ColdFusion server to do things with. So that's really what an entity type is, and there's certain ways that you can define those, and I'll show that here in just a moment. Next important thing is called an intent. So an intent is what phrase that somebody's actually going to say to trigger an action. So these are a group of sentences goes to an intent, and that common intent is something. So for example, you can have 10 different ways to say, I want to make an appointment. So I would like to make an appointment. I'd like to schedule an appointment. I'd like to make an appointment with X clinic. I'd like to, all those types of things, to give Google the taxonomy. So give them the ability to kind of figure out what are we actually trying to get at, and how can we make that different than something else. So we need to have enough intents in there, or enough training sentences in there, to make it distinguish itself from, let's say, making an appointment to scheduling a surgery, for example. So we essentially, this is where, this is pretty much the hardest part of building these things, particularly if you're talking about live clients, where you have to sit down and say, okay, what are 10 ways that somebody would ask for this, to get this direction? So if I'm talking with Rick over here, and I would say, what are the 10 ways that you would ask me, or you would try to convey to me that you want to make an appointment for a doctor? And I would literally have to write those down. Now, if it's just you kind of going through this thing and plowing through it, you may not be thinking of the 10 different ways that, let's say, a millennial may be asking it versus somebody who is geriatric. So these are different things that you kind of have to sit down, and this is really where you start to get some of that business logic in here, where somebody who actually, for example, when I was working with the urology clinic, somebody who actually sits in that desk and they answer the phone day in and day out, you kind of ask them, like, how do you know that somebody wants to do this versus that? And you start building those training sentences based on that. So the intents, like I said, are, you make a whole bunch of them, and that really allows the machine learning to figure out, okay, now I understand what Rick wants, and he wants to go this direction here versus this other direction. And those are literally just sentences that you type in. There's not anything more complicated than that in this system. Now, other systems that I've played with, it gets very complicated, because then you have to start weighting words and weighting training sentences and all that other type of stuff. Google's system this is the thing that makes it really shine, is the fact that All you have to do is type in a couple of sentences and you're done. So then we have a concept of what they call pages. So pages, think of that as the action that somebody's looking to take. So once we figure out that Rick wants to make an appointment, we put them into a page and then we say, what do we want to do once we know that Rick wants to make an appointment? So in here, you can ask for additional information. So you can say, I really need to know, like to have Rick make this appointment, I really need to know what clinic he wants to make it with, what time, what date, what is the, what's the nature of that appointment?
Preferred doctor.
Preferred doctor might be a thing. So these are all different things that we essentially think of it like a form fill. These are all different things that we need to ask so we can complete that transaction. And these are all things that happen in a page. A page can contain what they call fulfillments, which essentially are outputs. Fulfillment can be a spoken word, transferring a call to another number, sending it to an agent, writing to a database, all these types of things. These are fulfillments. So essentially, what are we doing once we've figured out this transaction? So routes. Routes are what's triggered when a certain set of conditions are met. These can transfer control to another page, end a session, or do something else. So routes can be conditional. So essentially, when I said that we wanted to make decisions based off of certain things. So for the example where I said, hey, I want to know the hours of the radiology clinic, for example. I can actually do a route and say, okay, if the person is looking for the radiology clinic, give this answer or route it to this page. Right. If they're saying that they want it for sports medicine, route them this way. And we can start to make different decisions based on these routes. So route is essentially another destination. Now, route could very easily also be transferred to a live agent and provide them all the information that they, that this person has said. A route could also be, like I said, sending it to a webhook where you write to a database. A route can be a bunch of different things, but essentially it's a transition to somewhere else. Think of the routes really as a CF switch or something like that, because you can have a whole bunch of conditions and then have it go different places based on that. A parameter is, think of something that the DialogFlow system asks the user. So similar to that form fill. So you can say a parameter is think of it as a variable, really. Let's say I need to know the time and date that you want to request for an appointment. So the date could be a parameter, and if the user didn't already tell me this, or if I don't already inherently know this parameter, I can go and ask the user to give it to me. A prompt for it, yep. But if they already gave it to me, just fill it in and ignore it. So think of, you're filling in a form fill for, like, let's say a sales call on your website or whatever. If somebody already said, hey, I'm looking at XYZ product, you don't have to ask them what product are you looking for. You already know that, so just don't show them that. So that's kind of where we go into these parameters. Parameters are matched up to entity types. So when we say we have a whole list of nouns or something like that, we essentially want to make sure that the user selects one of those. So think of it as as an option box, really. They need to select one of these 5 different things.
You think it might get to the point with software as a service, instead of filling out a form, join a site, that you'll interact with someone? Won't really be a someone?
Oh, I see that already happening today.
Okay, I haven't, but
interesting. Yeah. Well, you may not know. The good ones you don't know.
Well, if I have to type it in, I know it's not a
a person. Yeah. So, and then there's the concept of what's known as a fulfillment. A fulfillment is what action is being fulfilled back to the caller. Generally, this is something that is spoken. So a caller will say, no, we can respond back to the user and say, okay, this is the hours that our clinic is open. It's 8 to 5, so and so. That's a spoken word. It could also be transferring a call or transferring control of that flow to something else. For example, a chat bot, you can escalate to an actual person. That could be a fulfillment as well. So the fulfillment is like, what action are we taking? Then finally, the concept of webhooks. At any point in the system, so when we get when we're making a decision based off conditions, if we are doing fulfillments, if we're entering a page, if we're essentially doing anything in this system, We can do webhooks. What a webhook will do is it will send the entire state of everything that has happened up to that point. It'll send it to a third-party REST server. That REST server then can modify any of those items and then send it back. So for example, I can go and do a fulfillment where, or I can say a webhook in a system that if the user wants to make an appointment, I can send all that data I've already collected about that interaction. So I can say, Rick called in, he's looking to talk to the to sports medicine about a sprained ankle. He's selected next Monday at 1 o'clock. The webhook can then push that into, talk to the ColdFusion server. The ColdFusion server can do all sorts of all sorts of things on it, whatever logic you want. It can do like a CF calendar and add it to an Outlook calendar. It can go and send an email. It can go and, I don't know, all the fancy things ColdFusion can do. And then it can package up a response and say, okay, I've done all this stuff here. We're now successful. Go tell the user this. So go tell, do a fulfillment that tells the user, okay, your appointment is all set for 1:30. You're good to go. Make sure you read your email, whatever it might be. I said, webhook can allow you to interject responses, change responses, route calls, or do routes, really anything that you want. REST calls your CFML server. One thing to note with this, it'll only work with HTTPS. So you need to have a valid certificate that is signed by a certificate authority and all that stuff. And it needs to be on a public IP address. So it requires that the Google DialogFlow CX system in the cloud can make a TCP connection out to your server and be able to respond. What this means is it is not necessarily the easiest to debug, so you can't necessarily run a DialogFlow CX system hitting your laptop at home because you don't have a valid certificate, you don't have public IP address, you don't have any of that type of stuff. So it does tend to mean that you're going to be playing with a cloud server somewhere that is set up to accept these connections and do things and all that stuff. So
if you have a corporate server farm, you can't use it?
Oh, you could, as long as it's publicly accessible.
Okay.
But,
a lot of them aren't.
Pardon?
A lot of them
aren't. A lot of them are not, correct. But this is a great use case for something, let's say, like, what is the thing that you're trying to get the Adobe ColdFusion guys to do? Serverless stuff.
Yeah.
So having something serverless where you can go play with this and do all that type of stuff, this is a great example of where something like a serverless server would be, or setup function would be perfect. So this is a whole bunch of really tiny mouse print, apparently. I just pasted this in about 10 minutes ago, so sorry. But what does it look like when you come in, or when the server goes and posts data to your server? Essentially, you're going to get something like a tracking UUI, so a UUID of some kind, so you can track that conversation. But the more important thing is the session information here. It gives you all the information that somebody may have collected. So in this particular response that I just took the screenshot for here, the parameters that I had filled in were things like the clinic name. So I said that I needed the sports medicine. I asked for, this was for an injury. This was for the person asked for the November 15th, 2021, and they said that they'd be cool for any time between, looks like, noon and 5 p.m. for a particular interaction. The other neat thing about this too is you also get the full transcription of what they've said. So in this case here, you can actually get a whole list of everything that person has said throughout the life of their interaction with the DialogFlow system. So one thing that we found very useful for our health clinics is as soon as that phone rings, and let's say a call gets delivered to an agent, even if they weren't able to fill in the appointment times and all this other type of stuff, the agent in one shot can see everything that you've said. So they don't have to ask that same follow-up question that you've already said 4 times. They can see right on the screen, hey, this is Rick Mason, I'm looking for this. They say, oh, hey, Rick Mason, because you already said your name.
You could plug this into a CRM system.
You certainly could.
Yeah.
You certainly could. So then what does it look like when you want to respond? Again, sorry, this is turned into some microprint, so I need to break this up for other presentations. But this is just some CFML. What I'm doing is I'm getting some JSON that was sent to me. This case here, I'm doing a bunch of CF dumps so I can just get essentially this output from here. But really the meat and potatoes of this is I'm trying to extract out, the time and date that this person said that they needed, and then I'm going to do some actions with it. So in this case here, I'm just saying, hey, I'm going to go pick a random time in the time range that they said. But this could be writing to a database. This could be, again, doing those calendar entries. It could be doing all those crazy things that ColdFusion is really good at.
One of the most frustrating things in dealing with the first generation of systems is that someone, whether it's a system or the first person, asks you a whole bunch of questions.
Mm-hmm.
They transfer you to somebody else.
Yep.
And they have to ask you all the same questions again.
Yep.
And then they say, well, you got to talk to our supervisor. And then you begin again.
Yep. So the theory is with this, you can actually keep that the entire conversation that is happening with this all the way through, and then they can, the person getting the call knows exactly what's already said. Maybe they want to verify just to make sure that you didn't get switched lines or something like that. But generally, they should be able to see everything and be able to do everything in one shot. The technology is now here. So let's go and dive into
I agree with you, Rick. I hate when you call someplace and they ask you the same question 3-4 times over. Like, screw it. I'll be down there with my shotgun.
No. That's violence.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's something they handle. Okay. I mean, with my olive branch. There we go.
Yeah, your olive branch. There you go.
Yeah, I've been dealing with my cable provider, and trust me, I've made 3 phone calls, and nobody can give me an answer. They can't explain why the bill is what it is.
Right.
I understand. Sorry there.
Now, I've been talking a lot about my use case of a user calling in, doing a bunch of decisions with like an automated system and then getting handed off to an agent. There's a lot of other ways that you can use this type of system as well. I know that there is a large automotive company where essentially they have DialogFlow CX listening into a conversation. So let's say Rick calls in and he's talking to Randy, who's the customer service agent. Essentially, the system can be listening in, and if it starts hitting certain intents, it can actually prompt Randy to say certain things, either on the screen or as a little bug in his ear. So let's say you're calling in about your laptop not working. It's making a certain sound.
Mm-hmm.
It can actually start looking into the database as you're explaining this type of stuff. The agent doesn't have to be typing in anything. Essentially, it's looking at the database based on what you're saying, and it could be prompting the agent already to be, pulling up certain tech-based articles or things like that.
So even a beginning agent is going to answer like an experienced agent.
Exactly.
That's cool.
I've seen one use case for, I believe this was for a bank, tech support for, I think it was some sort of crypto or something like that, where very similar type of thing. They actually had the DialogFlow system listening into agents, conversations going back and forth. What it was doing in the background automatically was building help-based articles based on what their senior tech support people were saying back and forth.
Wow, that's cool.
So as instead of pulling off your senior people to write a tech-based article and the actual language and typing and all that type of stuff, it's just listening and it's doing a transcription of the stuff, and it's building full knowledge-based articles so the less senior people can automatically get that information. This can also, like I mentioned earlier, this could also be used for outbound type stuff. One of the things we've been talking about internally is when you get test results for certain things. Let's say you have to go for a blood work or something like that at one of the clinics. We can have the system call out, do a couple of terms of information to make sure that you are actually who answered the call. And when you do that, it can go and tell you your test results. Okay, your cholesterol is high, but this is not. Do you want more information about that? When you say yes or tell me more about this, it can start looking up, why is your cholesterol high, or what does that actually mean and all that type of stuff before it hands off to an actual nurse.
Kind of mixed whether that's a good idea or not. But
We haven't deployed it yet, but it's one of the things we've been talking about.
Yeah.
You know, because right now it pretty much says, okay, you know, you've got a test result, just notify the person that they have a test result and they have to call back into a nurse.
can you imagine a chirpy voice telling you have cancer or something like that?
Well, and again, those are the types
That's
of
what I
things
was
that,
thinking.
okay, so yes, now you have cancer or whatever, it'll say, hey, you know, we have some test results. We would like you to talk to a nurse right away. Is that, you know, do you want to be transferred to the nurse?
Yeah.
As opposed to the system that says, you know, for everybody, just talk to the nurse.
You know, it's different if it calls and says, we got your blood test results back. Everything was fine. You have nothing to worry about. I could see an automated voice doing that.
Yeah, and those are the ones we'd probably do, as opposed to the ones where, oh my God, you should head over to the ER right now. So let's go dive into the console a little bit more here. So we did show a little bit of it earlier. So like I said, when you build things out, you build them out kind of like a Visio diagram, if you will. But how do you actually get into this? So the first thing I'm going to go into is the Manage tab here, and we've got a couple of different items. The intents is the first thing that we talked about. So again, think of that making an appointment. So I go in here and I say, okay, the intent is we need to make an appointment. Well, how does somebody convey to me that they need to make an appointment? So these are some training phases that I put in here. So I'd like to make an appointment. I'd like to make an appointment with clinic name. I need to see my doctor about an appointment. I need to see a doctor.
Schedule a time.
I need to schedule a time could be another one I can put in here. And literally, it's the way you put these in here is say, I need to schedule literally all I'd have to type in, and now that's being trained. So the more of these that you do, the better it is. Now you'll notice that there's a couple of parameters that we have in here as well. Let's say if somebody gives me information about what direction I want to go. So let's say I need to schedule an appointment with a doctor in urology. So it automatically picked up that I said urology, so it knows the clinic name right there, and I can use that to fill in information later on. So again, it's all about picking up those different nouns and all that type of stuff. So where do I go and tell those nouns? These are the entity types I was mentioning earlier. So for example, the clinic names. I filled this one in here, and this is fairly complicated. I think I've got 18 different clinic names in here and all the different ways that somebody might ask for it. So a good example of that is nobody's actually calling in and saying osteopathic manipulative medicine. That just, it just rolls off the tongue. But anybody who's actually a patient there, they call it OMM or OMM Grand Rapids or osteopathic or, things like that. So if there's different synonyms of how somebody would ask something, a particular noun, I can start to add those things in. And the neat thing is, again, with this is we can do, you can also do regular expression entities on these. So if you know your regular expression, if they're saying like, I need to talk to Dr. 123, and you can actually do a regular expression for 123, you can put those in there. But the other thing that you can have in here as well is fuzzy matching. So if somebody says OMY, even though they really meant OMM, there's a pretty good chance that they probably meant OMM. We can still transfer to OMM. You can do things like
you mention a doctor's name. Can they look up and see the doctor and say he's in radiology and say yes, we can get you an appointment? Or...
Those are things you can program, but yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Automatically add entities. So if somebody keeps on asking for OMY, even though the actual clinic's name is OMM, you can have it so it automatically adds that in there, and you actually get notifications when they add these things. So these are all things that are built into this, and this is where that machine learning piece really comes into play.
Now, the people at the clinic add things, or do they get a hold of programmers and say?
So there are, at this point, There's not profiles where we can say they can only add this or they only add that. It's right now it is set so that a programmer would add these in. Now, we haven't given access to like the clinic staff themselves to be able to manipulate their own, but that is something that we have considered.
Or at least let them email you.
Yeah, I mean, emailing us is totally easy and all that type of stuff. So, appointment types. These are some of the ones I have in here. Really, really simple. A surgery, MRI, and ultrasound. The visit types, so like what is broken, or like what does a person need a thing for? You know, we could say checkup, and we could say just a regular appointment. For an injury, you'd say, you know, an elbow, sprained ankle, broken arm, those types of things. I have the COVID ones in here as well. But what's neat is if you're in this interaction, you say, I need to make an appointment for a COVID immunization, it's automatically going to correct it to COVID vaccine. And again, we can use that fuzzy logic to automatically add in very similar entries and to do all that type of stuff for us. Let's see here. So we've built intents, we've built entity types, and we've got those things that are, you know, going back and forth. So what we then do is we go into one of these the start page. This is where all interactions are going to start. And on all these, we always have a default welcome intent. So in here, we can say some sort of greeting when we start talking or when we connect the user to the system. So when we called that number, the first thing it said was, "Thank you for calling MSU Health Clinics. How can I help you today?" Now, what's also neat about this is I can actually have multiple fulfillments, and it will randomly pick those. So instead of every time it's saying thank you, you can have it say, "That's great," or "I hope you're having a great day," or you can actually have it, you know, like a human would say, you know, switch up the phrases every so often. We can actually have it randomize these phrases as it's bringing them back to us. Need a webhook on this one here, so I'm just going to turn that off because that's something I was playing with. So what happens? So they go into this default welcome intent. Then what happens? So then we have to make a decision. So the person has said, you know, in this particular case here, we're matching them to one of those intents, those phrases that they've uttered. So we've determined that they, you know, maybe want to do a go to a clinic, make an appointment, pay a bill, speak with a nurse or something like that. So these are all different intents that we've outlined. So for the make an appointment, for example, we can say the intent was they want to make an appointment. And then we can say, what do we want to do? A condition, we can say they can make an appointment, but only if the hours are from Monday to Friday, or only if the person's last name is Brown or something like that. So we can do these different conditions that a certain route would be followed. And this will make a little bit more sense in just a moment. A fulfillment, we could say, you know, thank you as soon as we know that we match a particular fulfillment. But in this case here, we're actually going to go and transition to another page. Now, why are we going to another page? We're going to that other page so that we can start to collect additional information. So in this case here, the make appointment, we're going to go and transition to that make appointment page, and then we can go to this make appointment page. So the make appointment page, again, looks very similar to that start. A couple of different things on here. So as soon as we get to this page, we're going to have some sort of fulfillment. In this case, we actually aren't going to say anything. But what we're going to do is we're going to start to ask some follow-up questions. So we've got parameters, and in this case here, I need to ask 4 things for me to successfully make an appointment with for a person. I need to know what clinic they want to make the appointment for, the reason for their visit, the day of the visit, and then the time that they want to make that visit. So if they want to do 3 p.m. or 1 p.m. or whatever it might be. So you'll see that I've matched these to different entity types. Remember earlier I did a list of the different entity type, different clinic names. So that would have been radiology or sports medicine or OMM or those types of things. So essentially the system's going to be listening for any of those or any of their synonyms. And then if I don't know already what that answer would be from some other interaction, I can then ask a fulfillment to prompt the user to tell me what that would be. So if I don't know what clinic that they want to make this appointment for, I can then ask, which clinic do you want to schedule the appointment with? And that's going to go ask for a response. Now the user can say, I don't know. The user can not give any response, whatever, and then I can do actions on that as well, as opposed to matching to one of the ones that
We're giving them a list to choose from.
or give them a list. Exactly. So so the system can actually be smart enough where if I say I want to make an appointment for what's a clinic we don't have?
Zoology.
The zoology clinic, sure. Animal radiology, I don't know, something like that. And that's clearly not one of them. I can actually do an event handler called a no input, a no match. So no match means it didn't match any of the ones that I had a list for, and it wasn't even close. So then what can I do? I can then do another prompt that says, well, it's not on that list, but here are some that you can choose from. You know, to reprompt them so you can have that conversation. And very similar to like when you're talking to a real agent. You know, you say, hey, you know, I want to pay with a credit card, and they say, or you tell them, I say to you, hey, I want you to pay with a credit card. You come back, okay, here's my Sears Rosebach credit card. And you just say, oh, what? I take Visa, MasterCard, and, you know, Express.
Yeah.
So, you know, that type of thing. So you can do these more natural interactions.
But what if I'm giving the department a name that makes sense, but you don't have in your system? Is there a point where I can say, instead of just hanging up, give me an agent and it?
You can always add in. So in my systems, when I build them, I always have a what we call a bailout. So in this case, for the event handler, we have a no match 1. When I add a no match 1, it gives me an option for a second turn, so a second interaction. So let's say, you know, going back to the credit card thing, I say, you know, tell me your credit card number. You say, okay, here's my Sears. I come back, no, Sears is not going to work. You then say, okay, well, here's my Montgomery Ward card. I come back and say, screw you, let's talk to a real agent. So after that second interaction where there's a no match, then I can bail to somebody.
Yeah.
Or I can do some other thing. I can actually have 8 turns if I want to. Go back and forth 8 times before, you know, we figure out something.
Diners Club.
A diner. I think that's still a real one though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that the Sears one isn't, so maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, you can still order Sears online. I would be surprised they still have cards. Maybe not.
I don't know. Anyway, but you know, you get the idea.
Yeah.
So. All right. So, so like, for example, here, like I said, the way that this is built is say, which clinic do you want to schedule an appointment with? There's also things that I can redact in the logs as well. So, of course, everything that's happening in this is logged somewhere. I can have it so it redacts certain things. So let's say that I'm collecting a credit card number. I don't ever want that logged. I can actually say, okay, when we're collecting an entity, this is collecting a credit card, replace it always with stars when I'm looking at the logs later on.
Or just save the last 4 digits.
Or I think when it redacts it just redacts the whole thing. But either way. But this is, again, for logging. So you want to hide, you know, certain information, maybe PII information, maybe HIPAA data or something like that. So in this interaction here, the making appointments, I'm going to be collecting essentially the 4 pieces of information. And once I have those 4 pieces of information, I then do a route. So the route says, okay, once we've collected all of the parameters, I then need to transfer to this make appointment confirmation. I'm going to go to the make appointment confirmation. And on here, then I can, come on. I did something silly. Excuse me. The next thing is it's a web app and I can just hit reload and it's all right there. So make appointment confirmation, and then I have a fulfillment, and then I can say, hey, this is the time that, you know, the system picked up, like automatically picked for me. Are you cool? You know, are you cool with that? Now this one over here, I also enabled a webhook, and this is where it's going to be talking to my ColdFusion server. So let's go run through this scenario just so we can see what's going on. So I'm going to go call the number again.
Thank you for calling the MSU Health Clinics. How can I help you today?
I need to make an appointment with sports medicine.
What do you need to be seen for?
A sprained ankle.
It looks like I have appointments available starting next Monday the 15th. Which day works best?
Monday.
Does the morning, afternoon, or evening work best?
Afternoon.
Okay, I have an opening in the sports medicine clinic for your injury appointment in Monday at 1:30 p.m. Will that work for you?
Yes.
Great, I'll get that booked for you. You will get an email shortly with the details. If you can make sure to be there at least 15 minutes early with the paperwork listed in the email, we would appreciate it. Is there anything else I can help with?
No.
What happens, and again, I know this is hypothetical, but
Mhm.
what happens, you're taking like 50 phone calls at once,
Mhm.
right? And there's going to be a number of people that are going to want an appointment with that clinic at that time. When you get this deep, do you lock everyone out for a little while before they make a choice and then there's fewer available for the next guy? Otherwise, it seemed like you'd have like a race condition. You'd book 1:30 for a bunch of people.
Yeah, and the way that we do it is we do an opportunistic lock on certain times. Most of our clinics, they're not that busy. They might have one or two, people calling at the same time. But it'd be no different than if you were called a live human, and you're talking to them back and forth, and then meanwhile, person on line B talking to agent B, they got that same time slot. So it's the same type of thing.
Okay.
But again, that's also why we also bail out to a human with all the information that was collected, so that they can verify everything is actually correct. Because maybe it's possible that you actually didn't want to make an appointment with that particular clinic. You went, you called for blood work and you went to your family doctor as opposed to the blood and heart clinic. Maybe that's, so we always want to, in our case, we always want to make sure that we bring in that live agent so that they can do that final verification and just do like that sanity check. Like the 1,000 things that we can program for, there's that 1,001st thing that we didn't program for, which we don't want to screw up. So that's kind of where this entire thing. Now, again, the actual ColdFusion code, it comes in as a form post. So what I'm doing here actually comes in as a JSON, just a REST call. So and I should probably make this bigger. And can I even do that? So in IntelliJ, by the way, they now have this really fancy mode, which is called like the light editor. And it doesn't look like it allows me to open that in. Okay, hold on. Let me go and reload this. Make reservation. Open. Hopefully it opens in the full version. Open in project. Sure. No. Okay. Nope. It's not going to let me do that. So let me go and
try Control++, because it's getting like the browser works that way. It's getting so a lot of software works that way. Not all of it, but
WordPad works really well. So I'm going to go do that.
Okay.
So hopefully that's a little bit easier to read.
Yeah.
But essentially we have, in my case here, I have a CF set. Or essentially I'm deserializing the JSON. I'm getting the HTTP post data. So essentially, or the request data. So this is the, what the REST system is posting to my application. In this case here, I'm doing just a bunch of debugging. So I'm dumping to the to a file with what Google told me. I do this again just for debugging. In production, I don't write that stuff because it doesn't make any sense. Excuse me. But actually what I do is I actually write some of that stuff to a database so I can actually go back later on. But what this is actually writing and what's actually being posted to me is this document here, which again, let me go and this one I can actually make bigger. So again, I get a struct that is, the page info, so I know what page is actually making this webhook call. The session information is all the data that was collected by me in this last call. So I said I wanted to talk to sports medicine. I said that I wanted to make an appointment on the 15th of November, 2021. Reason for that visit was an injury, or in my case, I actually said a sprained ankle, but because that was a synonym, it auto-corrected it. The system doesn't care what type of appointment it is, it knows it's an injury. So an injury is always, let's say, an hour long or whatever. The time range of the visit. Now, this is an interesting one. I said I wanted it in the afternoon. So in this case here, it said, okay, well, this is a time range. And by the way, I could just eat this in ColdFusion as a time range and then have the system pick it. But here it said between noon, so 12:00 through 17:59:59. So that would be afternoon according to Google, and I would say according to me as well. So from noon until 5 p.m. Now I could have also said evening. That would be, I think, from 4 p.m. until 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. or whatever it might be. Now I could have easily said between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. when I talked to the system, and it would have corrected that accordingly as well. But the neat thing is I don't have to program those things. It's smart enough to know that. And then it went and responded back and said, I have an opening in the sports medicine clinic. Again, this is just more of the same information. Here's the actual JSON that gets posted. Again, this is all just stuff that keeps on adding to it. I can get the full transcription. You can also get sediment out of this as well. I can find out, I was fairly happy talking to the system, but let's say Rick calls in and is quite irate because he doesn't want to talk to an automated system because, God damn it, his cable system sucks. Yeah. It can actually give you sediment on this as well if I turn on that option. So it can say that Rick is, out of 0 to 1, 0 being really, really angry and 1 being really, really happy, he is maybe a 0.001. So we can actually present that to the agent and say, oh, by the way, this agent, this customer is really, really hot. You need to maybe not joke with them or something. Another way that I've seen call centers do this is they have, because of contact center agent burnout, they actually distribute the calls for the angry customers more often. So let's say you have a agent who, you don't want an agent to get nasty customer after nasty customer after nasty customer, nasty customer. You want to interject some positive customers in there too, so that way they're a little bit, better, mental health and all that type of stuff. Or maybe you have certain agents who are trained in de-escalation. So in the cable TV world or in the satellite world, they have the customer retention specialists. These are people who are just loaded with the ability to give discounts and all this other type of stuff if you threaten to to cancel their service. Well, instead of having you could have an agent who is specially trained in this, so they get the nasty customers all the time and they know right away, hey Rick, I'm really sorry, I know you're waiting on hold, before we start I'm going to send you a box of chocolates, and right then you're like, oh, this is not so bad, to try to go and save that interaction. It's all possible, but by getting that data, you can now start to program for these things, and you can start to program your contact center software to accommodate that too.
What'd be more interesting is people that are certain agents where somebody comes in and they're calm. And the agent says some things to set them off. They've either got to put the agent back through training or give them another job or shove them down the road.
Right. And that's really the job of, let's say, the more advanced contact center software. They start listening to the agents, you do trainings, you do all that type of stuff. But
yeah, I don't think it benefits to get angry, but with my interactions with the cable company, I got them agreeing with me it didn't make any sense. But they couldn't provide an answer.
And not every conversation can be saved either. So
yeah.
But either way, so this is the data that you get to work with. And again, like I said, if I turn on sentiment, I can also start getting that type of data for every turn of that information. But what I did in this particular example is, okay, so I extracted out of that big blob of JSON, I extracted the day of the visit, the year, month, and day. So essentially the session info, parameters, day of visit that day. So that matches up with, this blob of information. So session info, so it's my JSON.session info, parameters, day of visit, year, month or day, or whatever it might be. I then go and, so I create a date variable. I've got a time variable, which is essentially my time span. And in this case here, I just said the first part of the time span, give it half hour later or something like that. But this could be a database dip that, takes a look at, or a calendar dip that says, okay, what time slots are available for this type of thing? Again, this is a really simple example here. So I extract that time, I extract that date, and then I go and respond back to the agent and say, okay, we've taken your information on the day of week of string, which is a ColdFusion function of the day of the week of my time. So essentially this would say Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursdays, whatever this blob is, at the time at at let's say 7:30 p.m. Will that work for you? And then it can go back and then do like a yes, no type of response or things like that.
What I like it doesn't do is the fake typing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why they do that. They think they fooled you, or?
That's called comfort noise. Again, for really, really slow databases, it might take 5, 10, 15 seconds to get those responses. So what they do is they do comfort noise, and that fake typing is actually from a company called Nuance. They do that last generation of IVRs. That's like their default setting. But some of them, will play music. Some will, do fake, they call comfort messaging. So comfort messaging is the system will ask you, oh, how's the weather out there? Things like that. And then ignores the response. But
that'd be preferable to the fake.
I don't know. Because it's fake because it doesn't matter what you say. It's still going to go and just throw it out.
Right. This is a friendlier system, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And programming it, this is really, I actually have some of my analysts that are on my team that are not programmers. They have made it through day one of Ben Forta's 21-day Learn SQL. And they're struggling at that. But they're able to program this. In fact, Sherry, one of my analysts who's kind of leading for our healthcare stuff, she's deployed 14 clinics doing this stuff. Full interactions and the whole thing. So yeah, she's not doing the ColdFusion side of it, but setting up the intents, setting up the, the flows and all that type of stuff, it's really that easy. We're getting really close to launching all the chatbot stuff too. So on the website, you can do those same interactions. We don't have to make a change. So that is the bulk of my presentation. Yeah, what are the questions you got?
I'm going to ask those typical MSU questions.
Okay.
So I saw the one, let me make sure I get this right. The route that said pay bill.
Yep.
I'm going to hit you with the PCI DSS stick. And then the other one is going to be another MSU question saying, Nick, we can't be shoveling, MSU data through some Google source that's probably storing it and keeping it and all that other crap. What's your answers to that?
So credit card data is, again, protected. Google's response to that is they are, this data is being stored and is being communicated not at rest, in motion in a data center certified for PCI DSS data. Everything is SSL encrypted, all that type of stuff. This solution for collect is not certified to collect credit card data, in my opinion. You can still redact that data, but I would not use this actually for bill pay. There are third-party services, BillPoint, for example, where you can transfer to them and they will collect that credit card data for you. But you could easily use this to, for example, in your case, Randy, instead of the pay a bill, you can say, you can talk to the donor or the customer or whatever to figure out how they're going to pay. So suss out, are they paying with a credit card? Are they paying with a check? Are they paying with pennies that they're going to put in a jar and mail to you? You can suss that piece out, and then if they're doing a credit card, you send them to the third-party bill collector. But if they're paying with a check, or if they're paying with cash or an invoice or something like that, then you can still collect all the information. And you're still doing that, all that information.
With transferring stock. Maybe
Crypto. Read off your Bitcoin 17-digit crypto address over the phone.
So what about we're talking about credit cards. Twilio. If I were using Twilio, I wouldn't have this issue, correct? Or I'd still have the same issue instead of CPass.
So Twilio still has the same issue. However, there are ways that you can do PCI DSS collection with Twilio. Essentially, what happens is Twilio has a what they call, I think, the Twill Pay tag, where essentially it completely takes you as an application developer out of the piece, and that voice is handled by a PCI DSS system. So in their case,
it does that by
say, I'm
transferring
collecting a credit card. Pardon?
Mm-hmm. It does that by transferring to a third-party system.
Pretty much.
The user really doesn't know. It just you got transferred.
Well, what's happening in the Twilio side is you execute that Twill ML tag that says, I think Twill Pay, I think is what it's called. What it does at that point, it actually pauses your conversation. So it takes you out of the loop as the application developer, and anything going through your system, it goes to that third-party system. And when it's done, it comes back to you and says, yes, the purchase or the credit card went through, or no, it didn't. So it is PCI compliant because you are not in the loop, so you're out of scope.
As soon as you get one of these, I don't know what, the health clinic accepting payment, are they doing that yet?
We are, and we are using a third-party service. So essentially, once they go through the DialogFlow system and we've identified that they are collecting credit card information, we then do a PSTN transfer to that third-party service. So we're out of the loop at that point.
So Nicholas is on the call. Nicholas, is this something you think we could do with Stripe? Nicholas might be asleep.
You can do it with Stripe, but again, I would not use this system to collect credit card data. Period.
Yeah, I agree.
But
because it transmits the data over to Google.
Yeah. I mean, that voice and all that type of stuff, and there's a lot of different points that you then have to start looking at, what compliance is and all that stuff. But you can easily loop in something like bill pay or bill point to essentially take over that call, take over that transaction. Essentially, you take yourself out of the loop. It mutes you completely, so you don't get any of that data. And then as soon as that transaction is complete, you can then continue that conversation. So yes,
Gotcha.
you can do it. You just wouldn't be collecting that data through DialogFlow.
So Nicholas, what about the system you use for telemarketing? Doesn't it do the same thing? I can't remember what it's even called right now. Bluefin. That's what it's about. Bluefin
those
and
are
Cache something.
Well, those are the devices that create an encrypted VPN tunnel.
So what they're doing in your case, Randy, is they are transferring the call to a cell phone to get it out of our systems, and then the person over the cell phone is giving the credit card data, which then they type into a terminal.
Gotcha. All right, I'll leave the payment thing alone. I get what you're saying. I understand it. Data. There's MSU data. Oh, we got to keep this secret. I mean, even an argument, I think they shut down, and I can't remember what it was called. It was a map plotting software that Google offers, and we're like, nope, can't use it anymore. I can't remember what it's called. So somebody remembers, please help me out. Instead, we have to use something else. And I'm sorry, I can't remember what it's called.
Well, we're using Esri for a lot of our mapping data.
Yeah, it wasn't Esri. It was more like commercial, and like a few of the development officers start using it, and they got their hands slapped. for using it. I can't remember what it's called, but Google has something that'll let you put a bunch of points on the map.
I've not run into any issues where we've run into confidential data. Now, we are careful to make sure that PII data is not made public with this type of system. But with any type of interactive system, you have to eventually collect useful data. So in our case, when we collect patient data, we are redacting it in the logs. So any of the logs that you tend to see coming out of the system will never have like a patient's name. So it'll never know in the logs that Google saves that it's Rick Mason calling about his foot surgery. He's got gout. He needs to, I don't know, whatever. So that type of stuff won't be stored. So, but it's still a useful service. We have to process it. Now, MSU absolutely has PII data going all over Microsoft's data centers and Google's data centers and all that type of stuff because we're using them for cloud services. So, we also have contracts that protect this data too. So,
what's PII?
Personally identifiable information.
Okay.
So that is associating you with a record.
Cool. So at this conference where you're going to do this like presentation, is it going to be a bunch of like institutions like MSU, or is it going to be? Hang on, let me back that one out. From a PCI DSS standpoint, there probably won't be companies there that are like MSU. What are we, like a level 1 or something like that?
Oh, this conference typically has about 5,000 attendees. Every one of the Fortune 500 are 499 of the Fortune 500 typically attend this.
Okay.
One notable one that doesn't attend is Cisco, but because they're the big competitors.
Gotcha. But we have Cisco phones, don't we?
No, we've got a Vaya.
No Cisco on campus at all?
I think we use their access points, but that's pretty much the limit of what we do with Cisco.
Gotcha.
No routers?
No.
Well, that was a big market.
Oh, Cisco is in lots of places, but they're not in here for switches and routers and that stuff, or phones.
Okay.
Or cable TV gear.
What about Duo?
Nope. We use Okta.
Okay. Yeah, we talked about that, I guess.
Yep.
So you want my donors that we care so much about to start talking to a computer now?
Well,
small donors, Randy, right?
Yeah, the small donor. Like,
you don't rate enough for a human, we'll let you talk to her.
But really where this is, where I find this most useful is you start taking, you start doing the really rote, stuff that you absolutely hate giving, like, think of the contact centers where people just want to shoot themselves. I do this, 3 things day in and day out and day in and day out. Automate some of that stuff. If it doesn't make sense where you need the intelligence of a human behind it, take care of the 95%. Definitely make sure you keep that human touch. There's no reason why you shouldn't have that. But there are definitely areas where you can just automate those things for the really basic stuff that just takes a lot of time. Again, I keep on bringing up that making an appointment thing. We ran some statistics for our health clinics. They were spending 30% of their time just going back and forth with humans to figure out what time they need to make an appointment for. 30% of their time, meaning that if we were to automate that, we could easily allow them to process 30% more customers with the same number of agents. That starts to become a big thing. And the interaction for setting that appointment, like back and forth, like what we were just doing there, is not that bad.
No.
I would say it's fairly comfortable. I wouldn't say it's the most comfortable. And there's always going to be edge cases where something, somebody says in there, I don't know, tell me when the next appointment is, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But if that happens, you bail them to an agent right then.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is, with 3 staffed agents, which by the way, our staffed agents are RNs. They're very expensive people.
Yeah.
They have
RNs booking appointments?
They do. Why does
there's
that
the
make
problem
sense?
right there.
Yeah, I mean, that is the problem. But those people who are booking appointments are the same people who are answering, complicated questions about test results and things like that. So they don't know what type of questions there is. So they have the highest level people answering these calls, which makes no sense for them to be spending, the very expensive dollars of a butt in seat of an RN to making appointments and doing that back and forth. We were able to take what was again a 5-minute interaction to book an appointment, that we turned it into 1:20. All of a sudden, we can now fit 3 appointments in the same time it would have would allow them to, only make 1.
Plus, if they want to spend more time with the patient, they can, because the volume they never see.
Right, exactly. And what's nice too is they get the phone call, delivered to them. The person's already picked their time and all type of stuff. A screen pop comes up, shows on the screen the time that they've picked, the appointment type, the CRM for like all the information about the person. All they have to do is literally click accept, go through the information, make sure it's sane and all that type of stuff, and just say, yeah, this is awesome. They can read it on the screen.
Do they have a way of automating changing appointments? Like the doctor wants to go play golf in California, and a week opened up, so at some exclusive country club, so they're rebooking all their appointments. That happens to me once a year.
We haven't had enough times where that's become a problem.
Okay.
If it becomes a problem for us, then yeah, we'll probably build that in. But right now, that's not been an issue for us.
At MSU, they don't just let them take off whenever they feel like. They got to schedule way ahead of time.
A lot of them, they have enough doctors where they cover for each other.
Oh, okay.
I think that's more the case. So I think the worst that we've had is there's been a few times where we've had to shut down a clinic because of COVID outbreaks. But that's been, I think that's been the extent of it that I'm aware of. Now I'm not in those clinics all the time, but but that hasn't been a use case that's been really brought up. So, but there's nothing to say that we can't do an outbound campaign where we have the system call out, bring in the DialogFlow system, say, tell a customer, hey, we have to rebook your appointment. And we go into that same subroutine where, they go and do the back and forth, and then we bail to an agent.
Right. We see it's an afternoon appointment. I have afternoon at this time available.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
You're off the phone in 30 seconds.
Exactly. So those are things, but we haven't built any of that logic yet. Haven't had the need yet.
I can see uses for it, and I hate the IVR systems. This doesn't seem as bad.
Yeah. And the other nice thing too is when you do the programming for voice, all of a sudden doing the chatbot side, building it into Facebook Messenger, building it into your website, building it any SMS, all that type of stuff, the work's already done. You do a little bit of tweaking, but the work is done.
Have you ever looked at a chat system called Drift?
No.
Drift is aimed at software as a startups to put on their homepage, and 24 hours a day, it can answer questions and try and close a sales pitch. And I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's pretty damn good. I'm assuming it's using its own technology as opposed to Google, but
I don't know.
We're going to be interacting with some of these, and they claim you don't even know. And I would say maybe part of the time you don't know, but as long as I get answers, I know nobody's there at 3 a.m. Eastern time.
Right.
And if I'm in Europe and I got a question, it's office hours, and my boss wants to know, I don't care if I'm chatting with a robot.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly it. So I mean, it's going to become harder and harder to have Turing's tests essentially that prove that this is a bot versus a person. So especially when you start getting into some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be really hard. That's where I always saw like IVR and technology like this being useful, especially as far as like our events. Because I'm always like, well, what happens after 5 EST and before 8 a.m. EST?
Yep.
So you just screwed to get a person?
Now, what's also nice too, and they don't have this built into the CX product yet, but they introduced it into ES, where you can actually have the system read and digest a frequently asked questions page. So we did a test with this for, like, COVID type stuff, where we had like 10 or 15 different questions and different responses that the doctors put together based on that. Pulled it into one of these systems. All of a sudden, somebody asks, these very bizarre questions about COVID, like, okay, what was it? It was something about they lost their sense of smell, but there was something else where, like, it made it so it wasn't necessarily a COVID case, but they asked like a particular question. You can have this thing and do very complicated answers based on these frequently asked questions too. And the nice thing is it's automated. It goes and checks this frequently asked questions page like every 15 minutes or whatever, and updates itself based on that. So that is something very much a secretary could go and just do an update on this page and have live answers being brought into the phone.
That's cool.
What's better than asking the experts on Facebook?
Well, yeah. Right. So any other questions?
Yes. So it's I'm sorry, what was it? It's called DialogFlow CX, but DialogFlow ES. You didn't. I don't know if there was like a comparison matrix you should add to this. Why would I want it?
So actually,
and why are you not using it? I mean, like, it must cost money, I assume.
Yeah. So CX and ES are built off the same technology. The difference, the thing with ES is it's a single turn of information. So essentially, it is ask one question and then you get and then you go one direction. Now you can chain these together, but it becomes really kludgy. So where CX really comes into, like, is really useful is that thing where I said, okay, I need to make an appointment with sports medicine tomorrow. Sorry, there's the train. Where it starts collecting all that information and then it's doing multiple turns of question and answer in one shot. Where ES, you literally have to, you start as that, I wouldn't say last generation, but it's built for a single turn. So it's built for a single question and then you get a single response, a single question and you get a single response. And those are not, they're not contextualized, they're not chained together. So the really powerful thing, again, with CX, and again, when I go into CX, come on. That, again, when I go to that make appointment piece, where I can ask those multiple parameters of questions. Now you can simulate this same thing in ES, but in ES, you would have to have essentially it ask the clinic name and then ask the reason for the visit and then do another one for the day of the visit and then the time range of the visit. You can do all those things, but you then have to be responsible for passing all that data back and forth through them and making decisions based off of those, as opposed to in here we're just saying, I need these 5 things, let the user fill them out until it's completed, that type of stuff. So that's the big difference.
I get it now. Initially, I was thinking ES was like a bigger version of this.
No,
but
ES
it's really
is
the basic version.
It is. It is. Yep. It originally, DialogFlow originally was just the ES version. CX is a new product that they came up with about a year ago. That builds on that basic product to kind of do all this chaining and do these parameters and the forms and all that type of stuff.
Ballpark between this Avaya thing and the cost of the Google thing, what are we looking at per month? I know it depends on volume, but.
Right, and all of our clinics are pretty high volume. I'm spending about $3,000 a month on that for all of the phone calls, for all the interactions, for everything included.
But if you had like a really small one, is there like a minimum you're stuck with per month, or
a few dollars?
Oh, okay.
There is a minimum. So there used to be to be a DialogFlow CX customer, it was $1,000 a month was the minimum. They've since lifted that, I believe. So it's all based off you pay for the phone number and then you pay for the interactions. It's
So basically, the biggest expense would be the Lucy server on EC2, which is about a minimum of $25 a month or something like that.
not even. I think I pay $6 or whatever.
Oh, it dropped that much?
It never was really that expensive.
Oh,
If you,
I thought the small EC2 was $25 a month, but that might be 6 or 8 years ago.
yeah, say in my doctor stuff, it's not really that expensive. So
serverless would be even cheaper. So
that's the theory. I don't think they have the pricing on.
So this is something a startup, if they take the time to create it, could do it and not be out a lot per month. It'd be, if they charge customers $25 or $50 a month for low volume, they'd be making all kinds of money.
So you get a $600 free credit when you sign up for it. It is 0.7 of a penny per request, 6 cents per minute for back and forth is really their costs. And then the ES side is 0.2 of a request for text, 6 cents for 15 seconds of audio. Output is a bunch of stuff. So yeah, they have charge. I mean, they've got the different charges outlined in here. Like I said, our system is very, we are very, very heavy users. Like I said, we did 100 and something thousand interactions in a month between our different clinics. So that's like 100 and let's just say that's like 90,000 phone calls.
Wow.
So it's on par with anything else that we've seen.
So 90,000 costs you said $3,000 a month?
Yeah, about $3,000 a month.
Okay.
And honestly, we're going to be able to lower that cost here pretty soon. We're going to be building some direct SIP trunks with a via CPass and Google Dialogflow to reduce that even further, probably by half, if not less.
Okay.
I think you could build your own local Mr. Movie phone with this technology.
Oh yeah, I mean it's that would be so easy to do. It's like that's a 20-minute project type thing, Because you do an intent, and then you'd say, what movie are you calling about, and then you do a route with a condition on it, and those routes would just be the different movies, and then you just give the information, and then you route back. It'd be a really easy way to test it. In fact,
yeah.
And you can even automate it by having, again, a ColdFusion server or a Lucy server in the background to do those responses. So, yeah.
Probably a lot more things. That's for
Well, it's definitely got me thinking, Nick. I mean, especially as far as like event stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because they're the only like inbound situation I can think of in our office. I mean, because our telemarketing system, that's outbound, and that's. Put it this way, the event thing would be easier for me to bring in.
Oh yeah.
Telemarketing. Yeah, you already know that'd be uphill battle.
Yeah.
Like, we got this new system. It might be cheaper. It might be able to do some slick stuff. And you know what? We might not need to pay these students. Oh, I'm sorry. That's what I'm saying there, right? Or pay as many of them.
Yeah, what about like the Alumni Association, where they would get a lot of inbound concerns or questions, maybe around sports seasons, tickets, that sort of thing?
It's all possible.
Yeah. I mean, I see more like the athletic office. I mean, the problem is my constituents still like the phone.
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of them. Really well. I don't trust that thing I ever talk to somebody. Okay. That doesn't scale well. Until you get
which is, a totally valid thing. There's some people that they definitely want to they want to do, they want to talk to a live person because that's what they're paying for. That's fine. But there's a lot of people that, they just, they're totally fine. Again, that rote information gathering stuff, as long as it's going somewhere useful.
Yeah.
What a lot of people really hate is, okay, you enter in your credit card number, you enter in all this type of stuff, and then you get transferred to agent. You have to do it all over again.
Right.
Like that stuff just sets people off. But if you actually make it useful, so you talk to the automated system, you get all the account verification, all that validation is taken care of, then you go to a real agent, and they have all that information in front of them, then they're happy. Like that turns into a very happy type of situation. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
So I wonder what Nicholas is thinking back there. You sleep, Nicholas, or? You
I
might
have
be
kids
asleep.
being loud in the background, so I'm trying to stay quiet.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming, sir. I don't know who that Dan guy was, and Rick doesn't know who he was either. So
Yeah. I don't think so. He didn't have an account, so.
Okay, well, we broadcast on the internet, Randy, so
stop that, man.
Somebody
There's
had
all
an
types of
interest in
weirdos
this
out there.
specific system, I think, and
Yep. I'll go edit this tonight, and then we'll get it on the site in the next few days.
cool.
Gotcha.
Cool.
All right.
Thank
So
you
when's your
very much.
presentation, Nick?
Pardon?
Is your presentation coming up soon?
December 11th, I think it is.
Gotcha. I think if you talk about ES, I think you need, I don't know, something in there.
Is it going to
Until
be
you
live
showed me,
stream
I was like,
by any
single turn.
chance?
Like, what is that?
Sorry, what was that, Randy?
When you were talking about single turn, I was like, I don't know what that is exactly until you showed it. I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
get it now.
Yeah, that's a turns of information is very machine learning type of concept. So yeah, sorry, I should probably explain that, because yeah, turn of information is really the how many back and forth interactions does it take to do something.
Gotcha.